We meet this evening not in sorrow, but in gladness of heart. We meet this evening not in sorrow, but in gladness of heart. This is Abraham Lincoln's last public address, April 11th, 1865. The evacuation of Petersburg and Richmond and the surrender of the principal insurgent army give hope of a righteous and speedy peace whose joyous expression cannot be restrained. In the midst of this, however, he from whom all blessings flow must not be forgotten. A call for a national thanksgiving is being prepared and will be duly promulgated. Nor must those whose harder part gives us the cause of rejoicing be overlooked. Their honors must not be parceled out with others. I myself was near the front and had the high pleasure of transmitting of the good news to you, but no part of the honor for plan or execution is mine. To General Grant, his skillful officers and brave men all belongs. The gallant navy stood ready, but was not in reach to take active part. By these recent successes, the reinauguration of the national authority, Reconstruction, which has had a large share of thought from the first, is pressed much more closely upon our attention. It is fraught with great difficulty. Unlike a case of a war between independent nations, there is no authorized organ for us to treat with. No one man has authority to give up the rebellion for any other man. We simply must begin with and mold from disorganized and discordant elements, nor is it a small additional embarrassment that we, the loyal people, differ among ourselves as to the mode, manner, and means of reconstruction. As a general rule, I abstain from reading the reports of attacks upon myself, wishing not to be provoked by that to which I cannot properly offer an answer. In spite of this precaution, however, it comes to my knowledge that I am much censured for some supposed agency in setting up and seeking to sustain the new state government of Louisiana. And this I have done just so much as, and no more than, the public knows. In the annual message of December 1863 and accompanying proclamation, I presented a plan of reconstruction, as the phrase goes, which I promised, if adopted by any state, should be acceptable to and sustained by the executive government of the nation. I distinctly stated that this was not the only plan which might possibly be acceptable, and I also distinctly protested that the executive claimed no right to say when or whether members should be admitted to seats in Congress from such states. This plan was in advance submitted to the then cabinet and distinctly approved by every member of it. One of them suggested that I should then, and in that connection, apply the Emancipation Proclamation to the theretofore accepted parts of Virginia and Louisiana, that I should drop the suggestion about apprenticeship for freed people, and that I should omit the protest against my own power in regard to the admission of members to Congress. But even if he approved every part and parcel of the plan which has since been employed or touched by the action of Louisiana, the new Constitution of Louisiana declaring emancipation for the whole state practically applies the proclamation to the part previously accepted. It does not adopt apprenticeship for freed people, and it's silent, as it could not well be otherwise, about the admission of members to Congress, so that as it applies to Louisiana, every member of the cabinet fully approved the plan. The message went to Congress, and I received many commendations of the plan, written and verbal, and not a single objection to it from any professed emancipationist came to my knowledge, and until after the news reached Washington that the people of Louisiana had begun to move in accordance with it. From about July 1862, I had corresponded with different persons supposed to be interested, seeking a reconstruction of the state government for Louisiana. When the message of 1863 with the plan before mentioned reached New Orleans, General Banks wrote me that he was confident the people, with his military cooperation, would reconstruct substantially on that plan. I wrote him and some of them to try it, and they tried it, and the result was known. Such only has been my agency in getting up the Louisiana government. As to sustaining it, my promises set out as before stated, but as bad promises are better broken than kept, I shall treat this as a bad promise and break it whenever I shall be convinced that keeping it is adverse to the public interest. But I have not yet been so convinced. I have been shown a letter on this subject, supposed to be an able one, in which the writer expresses regret that my mind has not seemed to be definitely fixed on the question whether the seceded states, so-called, are in the Union or out of it. It would perhaps add astonishment to his regret were he to learn that since I have found professed Union men endeavoring to make that question, I have purposely forborne any public expression upon it, as appears to me that question has not been nor yet is a practically material one, and that any discussion of it, while it thus remains practically immaterial, could have no effect other than the mischievous one of dividing our friends. As yet, whatever it may hereafter become, that question is bad as the basis of a controversy, and good for nothing at all, a merely pernicious abstraction. We all agree that the seceded states, so called, are out of their proper practical relation with the Union, and that the sole object of the government, civil and military, in regard to those states is to again get them into the proper practical relation. I believe it is not only possible, but in fact easier to do this without deciding or even considering whether these states have ever been out of the Union than with it, finding themselves safely at home. It would be utterly immaterial whether they had ever been abroad. Let us all join in doing the acts necessary to restoring the proper practical relations between these states and the Union, and each forever after innocently indulge his own opinion whether in doing the acts he brought the states from without into the Union or only gave them proper assistance, they never having been out of it. The amount of constituency, so to speak, on which the new Louisiana government rests would be more satisfactory to all if it contained 50, 30, or even 20,000 instead of only about 12,000. As it does. It is also unsatisfactory to some that the elective franchise is not given to the colored man. I would myself prefer that it were now conferred on the very intelligent and on those who serve our cause as soldiers. Still, the question is not whether the Louisiana government as it stands is quite all that desirable. The question is, will it be wiser to take it as it is and help to improve it, or to reject and disperse it? Can Louisiana be brought into proper practical relation with the Union sooner by sustaining or by discarding her new state government? Some 12,000 voters in the heretofore slave state of Louisiana have sworn allegiance to the Union, assumed to be the rightful political power of the state, held elections, organized a state government, adopted a free state constitution, given the benefit of public schools equally to black and white, and empowering the legislature to confer the elective franchise upon the colored man. Their legislature has already voted to ratify the constitutional amendment recently passed by Congress abolishing slavery throughout the nation. These 12,000 persons are thus fully committed to the Union and to perpetual freedom in the state, committed to the very things and nearly all the things the nation wants, and they ask the nation's recognition and its assistance to make good their committal. Now, if we reject and spurn them, we do our utmost to disorganize and disperse them. We, in effect, say to the white men, you are worthless, or worse, we will neither help you nor be helped by you. To the blacks we say, this cup of liberty which these your old masters hold to your lips, we will dash from you and leave you to the chances of gathering the spilled and scattered contents in some vague and undefined when, where, and how. If this course, discouraging and paralyzing both white and black, has any tendency to bring Louisiana into proper practical relations with the Union, I have so far been unable to perceive it. If, on the contrary, we recognize and sustain the new government of Louisiana, the converse of all this is made true. We encourage the hearts and nerve the arms of the 12,000 to adhere to the work and argue for it and proselyte for it and fight for it, feed it, grow it, and ripen it to a complete success. The colored man, too, in seeing all united for him, is inspired with vigilance and energy and daring to the same end. Grant that he desires the elective franchise. The elective franchise, will he not attain it sooner by saving the already advanced steps towards it than by running backwards over them? Concede that the new government of Louisiana is only to what it should be as the egg is to the fowl. We shall sooner have the fowl by hatching the egg than by smashing it. Again, if we reject Louisiana, we also reject one vote in favor of the proposed amendment to the national constitution. To meet this proposition, it has been argued that no more than 3/4 of those states which have not attempted secession are necessary to validly ratify the amendment. I do not commit myself against this further than to say that such a ratification would be questionable and sure to be persistently questioned, while a ratification by 3/4 of all the states would be unquestioned and unquestionable. I repeat the question, can Louisiana be brought into proper practical relation with the Union sooner by sustaining or by discarding her new state government? What has been said of Louisiana will apply generally to other states, and yet so great peculiarities pertain to each state, and such important and sudden changes occur in the same state, and withal so new and unprecedented is the whole case that no exclusive and inflexible plan can safely be prescribed as to details and collaterals. Such an exclusive and inflexible plan would surely become a new entanglement. Important principles may and must be inflexible. In the present situation, as the phrase goes, it may be my duty to make some new announcement to the people of the South. I am considering and shall not fail to act when satisfied that action will be proper. In the present situation, as the phrase goes, it may be my duty to make some new announcement to the people of the South. I am considering and shall not fail to act when satisfied that action will be proper. This was given April 11th, 1865. He's going to get killed 3 days after this. This is his last public address. He went on and on about fucking Louisiana, didn't he? God damn. What the fuck was going on? On the morning of April 9th, 1865, Lee surrendered to Grant at the Appomattox Courthouse. Lincoln received the news that evening upon the return to Washington on the ship River Queen, on which he had been traveling for several days between the battle sites in nearby Virginia. By the 10th of April, the news had spread throughout the North, and Washington and other cities were celebrating. On the evening of April 11th, Abraham Lincoln stood at an upstairs window at the White House to address a crowd of hundreds assembled on the lawn. Lincoln's last public speech notes the surrender of the principal insurgent army without mentioning Lee by name, but dwells particularly on what was obviously foremost in Lincoln's mind at the time: how to bring about reconstruction of the Union, how to bring the Confederate States back into the national government. For Lincoln, the crux of the problem was simple to state. There was no recognized political entity with which he could deal, as there would have been if it had been a foreign war. No one man, he said, has authority to give up the rebellion for any other man. He then went on to detail at length, and in a way that many of his listeners that evening found indecisive and inconclusive, the myriad political problems he had already encountered in setting up a reconstructed government in occupied Louisiana. He was well aware that these problems foreshadowed those that would arise throughout the former Confederacy in subsequent years. These problems, of course, were not to be Lincoln's to deal with. 3 days later, on the evening of April 14th, Abraham Lincoln was killed by John Wilkes Booth as he and his wife and 2 guests watched a performance of Our American Cousin, an English comedy at Ford's Theater in Washington. Oh, Captain, my Captain, what have they done? Forgive them, for they know not what they do. JFK, RFK, Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, Martin Luther King Jr., anybody that says, let's be peaceful, let's be a good country, good, loving, united, peaceful, they get shot in the fucking head. Is that Christianity? Christianity makes sure there's no good people out there. Oh, he actually thinks he's good. He is a real good person. He's not a fake piece of shit. You obey the priest and you think that makes you a good person. I believe in God! And you're a bad person, so you're going to hell. But they don't care about logic. They just fucking fake-ass pieces of shit. Put on that veil of fucking goodness so they could be as wicked as they fucking want. Man, the religious motherfuckers. It's not the Jewish folks that get under my skin. It's the Protestant, Catholic, Baptist sons of bitches. It's the fucking Christians. It's the white Anglo-Saxon Christians. That's who's causing all the fucking problems in this country. You're wrong, Kanye. I've only seen maybe 1 or 2 Jewish people. I've only talked to 1 or 2 Jewish people in my lifetime. I don't know, maybe a dozen or something. But the Jon Stewart, Albert Einstein, I only know basically big-time celebrities. It's Christians all over the place. There's Christians over there. There's Christians over here. There's Christians everywhere. Everywhere you fucking look, there's a fucking Christian.